There's a lot more to intimacy than just physical intimacy and sex. In today's video, we're going to talk about 4 distinct kinds of intimacy and how to increase them, build them in your life, not just in your romantic relationships, but in all of your relationships. And this is really important because way too many people, men and women both, rely solely on sex for all of their intimacy needs. But the reality is that humans are very social creatures. We're relational creatures, and we need intimacy. We need that felt sense of connection with other beings, other people, other creatures in order to feel whole, safe, happy, and emotionally healthy. If our only source of intimacy is through sex, then those emotional and relational needs that we naturally have as human beings are probably not being met. And that can manifest with all kinds of problems in your life. One of the most common ones is finding yourself attracted to people and relationships that aren't very good for you. For example, you might find yourself drawn to people who cheat on you, or who love you but hurt you, or who constantly neglect or reject you. If you find yourself getting in relationships, whether they're romantic or friendships that keep letting you down, that's a pretty good sign that you don't have enough intimacy built into your life, that you're not building those connections. And so out of the desperation that we naturally feel for that connection and intimacy, we'll find ourselves seeking out these unhealthy relationships just to get that little bit of sex or physical connection and intimacy that makes us feel more whole and a little bit safer and more complete as humans. So the bottom line is that if you want to have healthy romantic relationships, you need to be building intimacy in a lot of different ways, in different parts of your life, and with different people in your life. Do not rely on just sex with your partner to meet all of the really complex human emotional needs for intimacy and connection. For those of you who are new to my channel, I'm Rachael Sloan. I'm a certified life coach, a master NLP practitioner, and the creator of Better Beyond Divorce, which is a unique coaching program designed to meet the needs of men going through divorce, helping them regain their confidence, deal with the pain, and move forward into healthier relationships. On this channel, I talk about divorce, emotional regulation, building relationships, the whole gamut, anything to do with relationships, we are going to address and talk about here. In this video, I'm going to talk about 4 specific kinds of intimacy: physical intimacy, emotional intimacy, mental and spiritual intimacy. Now, depending on who you ask, some people will say there's 4 kinds of intimacy, others say there's 7 or 9. As you'll start to see, there's a lot of crossover in how you build these kinds of intimacy. So let's just jump in and get started. We're going to start with physical intimacy because that's the one that most of us think about when we think about intimacy. In fact, I find that a lot of men that I talk to actually use the word intimacy as a polite way of talking about sex. But sex is actually just one small piece of physical intimacy, which is just one type of many kinds of intimacy. So sex is a great way to build physical intimacy, but there's a whole bunch of other ways. Please keep in mind as we're talking about physical intimacy that these are not just things that you can do with a romantic partner. There are a lot of forms of physical intimacy that you can develop with friends, with family members, with children, and even to some extent with acquaintances and strangers. Okay, so physical intimacy beyond sex includes my number 1 favorite is hugs. If you hug somebody for 20 seconds, it releases oxytocin in both people. Oxytocin is the hormone of human bonding. It is the chemical in our bodies that we naturally produce when we gaze into the eyes of a baby, right? When we have sex with one another. It is the hormone of human bonding, of human connection. It makes us feel love. It makes us feel connected. It makes us want to be close to somebody. Basically, it makes us feel really good. So anytime that you are feeling isolated, down, alone, give someone a hug. It doesn't have to be a romantic hug. It can be a hug with a friend or a parent or a child. It is the physical contact for 20 seconds or more that releases oxytocin in the brain. Hand holding is another great way to build intimacy. And again, this doesn't have to be with a romantic partner. Any time that you have skin-on-skin contact for any prolonged period of time, you're going to get a hit of oxytocin that's going to make you feel more connected, more loved, more loving, safer, all of the good things that come along with human bonding. A less commonly considered form of physical intimacy is in the form of physical sports. Any kind of contact sport or sport that involves physical contact with another person is a form of physical intimacy. And sports are really interesting because even though you're competing with other people, there's a level of trust that's built into that physical contact. Even though it might be rough, you are trusting the other person to follow the rules of the game, to not hurt you, to engage with you in a safe way. So sports can actually be a really great way to feed your need for physical intimacy. Some of my other favorites with physical intimacy are physical play, wrestling, and tickling. These are especially fun if you have children. Right? Any kind of physical activity that you do together, whether that's roughhousing around the house, playing outside, tickling and physical play are great ways to build that physical intimacy with your children. And depending on what your adult relationships look like, there might be room for that there as well. Okay, there's 3 more ways of developing physical intimacy we're going to talk about that are all a little bit different. So you can meet your needs for physical intimacy by petting or cuddling with animals, right? It can be something as cuddly and friendly as a dog that you let in your bed, or it can be petting a horse. For anyone who's ever had a close relationship with an animal, whether it was a pet, a horse, livestock, I think you know about this, right? That physical contact, skin on skin with an animal, or skin on fur in this case, also helps release oxytocin. You form a bond with that animal. You feel often a lot of the same feelings that you would feel towards another person or towards a child as a result of physical contact. So physical touch with animals is a wonderful way to help meet your body's needs, your nervous system's need for physical intimacy. You can also meet some of that need for yourself. So there's a lot of self-soothing techniques that involve touch. There's the tapping techniques that are highly effective for anxiety. There's practices of self-massage, even trigger point releasing the tension in your fascia, which can actually be quite painful, can help meet your need for physical intimacy. And that's something that you can do for yourself at any time. And the last one I'm going to mention here is going to actually get a professional massage or other kind of body work. That's also an amazing and really safe way to meet your needs for physical intimacy. Okay, so we just talked about 10 different ways to get just physical intimacy that have nothing to do with sex, right? So are you starting to see there's such a rich world out there? There are so many ways to get intimacy, to have that experience of connection, safety, and bonding. And we're just at the physical level right now. So there's a lot more to this than just sex. Okay, let's keep going. We're going to talk about emotional intimacy next. This is the one that I think is really hard for people because emotional intimacy involves taking risks, being vulnerable, and maybe more than anything, it involves sitting with discomfort. Right? It means that you have to be aware of your own emotional experience, which can be very uncomfortable if you're not used to exploring that. And it also means that you might have to sit with somebody else's painful emotions, which can be even more disconcerting or uncomfortable. So I'm going to give you a number of ways to increase the emotional intimacy in your life with all of the people who are important to you. Perhaps the number one way is to start being honest. And this is actually a really cool way to build emotional intimacy even with strangers. How often when somebody asks you how you are, do you lie? How often do you say you're fine when you're really sad? How often do you say, I'm good, when you actually had some devastating news that morning, or your car just got hit in the parking lot and you're actually really angry? It is really common and even considered polite in our society to respond, I'm fine, or I'm good, when somebody asks, how are you? Have you ever been around somebody who doesn't do that, who's just honest, who says, actually, I'm really depressed today, or I'm having a really hard time today, or, I'm really not looking forward to this thing that's coming up? My husband often does this, and it is so cool to see how it opens people up. If you are at the grocery store and somebody asks how you're doing, and you tell them the truth, you usually get one of two responses. Either it makes them uncomfortable, and they don't know what to do with that, so they try to ignore it or brush it off. Or, and this is when it's really cool, or they open up in return and they say, oh, really? I'm so sorry. Tell me about that. What's going on for you? Or, oh, that sucks. Or, wow, I'm actually having a really crappy day too, but I haven't had an opportunity to say it yet because everyone else is pretending they're fine. When you are honest about how you're doing with friends, with family, with total strangers at the bank or the grocery store. You are giving people an opportunity both to support you and to be honest themselves about how they're feeling. You're stepping out of the game, the pretense that everything's okay when it actually isn't. And that is an amazing opportunity for connection and emotional intimacy. Another great way to build emotional intimacy is to listen and ask better questions. So you might find that you get caught up in just talking to your partner or to your friends about kind of the day-to-day things about life. What are you doing today? What are you making for dinner? How was work? How often do you ask somebody how they're actually doing? Hey, what's going on in your life right now? You seem a little off. You've seemed a little sad. I haven't heard from you in a few days. Is everything okay? How often do you ask and genuinely want to know what someone's internal state is like? The key to doing this is not just to ask better questions, it's to really listen, which mostly means shutting up and paying attention to what the other person is saying. The next way to build emotional intimacy goes hand in hand with this, and it is to genuinely care what the other person is saying. Often we ask a question, then we get distracted. We look at our phone, we're thinking about something else, or we're thinking about how we're going to respond to what they just said. Genuinely listen. Genuinely care about what that person is saying, and you will not be able to avoid developing emotional intimacy with that person, whether they are a stranger or a romantic partner or somebody you've been married to for 25 years. There are two things that are actually going to help you with the genuine caring. The first is to assume a positive intent. So when that person is talking, whether they're complaining or they're saying something you totally don't agree with, or they're talking about something that's not interesting to you, assume that there is a positive intention behind what they're saying, that there is something they want you to hear, to understand. Start to listen behind the words of what that person is saying and get curious about why they're telling you this. What is it that they are actually trying to communicate about how they're thinking, what they're feeling, what they're afraid of? Assume that there is a positive intention behind everything coming out of their mouth. And if you can't find one, go to one of these two. Either that person is seeking safety or they're seeking love and connection. Sometimes there's a different positive intent, but 90% of the time behind people's actions, especially their negative actions or negative words or things that sound like anger or complaining, it's usually driven by those two needs, the need to feel safe, the need to feel loved. So assume a positive intent, and that will help you genuinely care about what that person is saying. Hand in hand with that is to start to cultivate a sense of unconditional high regard for that person. So this is actually the secret to life coaching. The only way a coach is supportive and actually effective in helping a client experience the kind of change they want to experience or reach a goal is to assume unconditional high regard of that client. That means assuming that they are capable, that they are intelligent, that they are able to respond, that they are able to think critically, and that they are able to solve their own problems. It is holding an awareness of that person that involves respecting them very deeply. This is an amazing thing to start to cultivate in your relationships, and it's something most of us don't do. We tend to assume that other people maybe aren't that capable. We often love somebody, we care about them, we feel affection for them, but we're always trying to fix them or fix their problems for them or solve things for them. We are not holding them in unconditional high regard. We're not believing in their capability. We aren't respecting their free will, their ability to choose their path in life, their thoughts, their emotional experience. If you find that you're really struggling with this one and you're like, well, Rachel, but this person isn't capable and this person actually has all these issues that I need to fix or somebody needs to fix, try this exercise. Choose one thing, just one, that you like about that person. It doesn't have to have anything to do with how capable they are. It can just be that you love their hair. And before you go into a conversation with that person, think that to yourself again and again. Gosh, I just love her hair. She has the most amazing hair. Her hair is incredible. It feels silly. Your brain's going to be like, this is stupid. What is this even doing? But if you practice focusing on something that you really like about a person, it's going to affect the way you're feeling. You're going to start thinking about how much you like it, how much you like it, how much you like it. And you're going to start to feel a little bit of affection for that person. When you go into a conversation with them, that feeling impacts all of the subtle subconscious body language in your interaction. When you go into a conversation with somebody thinking that they're not capable, that they need help, that they're a loser, that they've got all these issues, that they're a complainer, that they're this, they're that, even if you are being really nice and polite and trying to be empathetic and compassionate, all of those beliefs are going to shine through in that subconscious body language. The vast majority of our communication happens on the physical level, subconsciously. So you can start to shift that body language into a more positive light by focusing on something positive about the person. In the process, it's going to help you treat them with more genuine respect and high regard, which is going to make these kinds of open, curious conversations a little bit easier. They're going to be more likely to open up to you because they're going to feel it. And we start cycling up into this deeper emotional connection, emotional intimacy. Okay, we could just go on and on with ways to build emotional intimacy, but we're going to keep going. Let's talk about mental intimacy. This is a really interesting form because it's not about emotional safety or feeling physically connected or bonded to somebody. It's about feeling intellectually connected to somebody, right? It's about being able to have a deep conversation about a topic that is of interest to both of you. And the key to building intellectual intimacy is being able to be in conflict without passing judgment on the person who disagrees with you. So there's a few things that you can do to support this. The first is to bring up topics that are interesting to you. Are you fascinated by politics or economics or history or science? Whatever the area is, start talking to people about the things that you like to explore. Right? Talk to people about ideas, about theories, about possibilities, not just about events and other people. Some people won't engage in those conversations, but a lot of people will. And when they do, ask questions. Be curious. That's perhaps the number one key to building mental intimacy, is being genuinely curious about the other person's perspective. Something that can really help with this is to ask yourself the question at the start of every conversation, what can I learn from this person? It's especially important to do this with people that you don't think you could learn something from. Somebody that you see as less educated than you, less experienced than you, from a different culture. Every conversation you go into, what can I learn from this person? And be genuinely curious. What might they have to share? What perspective, what information, what experience that's novel to you? In these conversations, it's important to explore and be curious and try to understand what the other person's perspective is and why. You can come back to the emotional intimacy of assuming positive intent. If they're saying something you don't agree with, maybe they support a politician that you absolutely abhor, get curious about it. Let's assume there's a positive intent. Let's hold that person in high regard. And if that's true, if they're capable, if they're worthy of respect, if they have positive intentions, then how is it that they could support this person that you don't? There's so much that opens up for you to understand and become curious about when you hold that kind of awareness and space for that other person, when you allow the possibility that they're a good person with good intentions, who's intelligent and capable, and believes differently than you. I'm just going to add in here that if you've struggled to build this kind of mental or intellectual intimacy in romantic relationships, it might be because there's not enough emotional intimacy yet. So I see often one partner or the other feeling like their partner just isn't up for these kinds of like mental conversations or difficult topics about ideas or science or politics. If that's the case for you, start by building emotional intimacy, because if somebody doesn't feel emotionally safe in a relationship, they're much less likely to share openly and honestly what their ideas are, especially on topics that can be controversial and especially if they disagree with you. So before you write off your partner or friend's ability to have mental intimacy with you, to be at that level with you, make sure that there's a strong foundation of emotional intimacy there first. If you want some examples of this, I would recommend reading Dostoevsky. All of his books are amazing because the characters so often are in these intense debates where they're absolutely on opposite sides, and yet they're friends before, during, and after those conversations. And I think that that is a skill, a practice that a lot of us have lost in these more recent decades. Okay, let's move on to spiritual intimacy. This one can get kind of confusing because spirituality means so many different things to different people. Right? For some people, it's really about religion, and you can build spiritual intimacy with someone by sharing religious activities, going to church together, praying together, saying a devotional together. But for other people, spirituality means something very different. And for the purpose of this conversation, I would just define it as the feeling of being connected to something beyond yourself. So nature is an amazing place to experience spiritual intimacy. The really cool thing is you can experience it with somebody else or entirely on your own. Right? That's true of religious intimacy as well. So you can have these experiences by being out in nature, by being in a church, any practice that helps you feel more connected to something beyond yourself. And once you start to understand what those things are for you, you can offer to share them with people in your life, with your friends, family, children, a partner, a spouse. Another interesting way to experience spiritual intimacy is to get really clear about your values. There's a lot of great exercises out there, if you Google them up, about how to define your core values, the things that really matter to you and that really drive your actions day to day. You can define those values, and then every time you're living by them, you are cultivating spiritual intimacy. You can also bring that into a relationship by getting curious about other people's values. In fact, in romantic relationships, I would very strongly recommend that you have these conversations. Be honest, be open, be curious. What are your values? What are theirs? Where do they coincide and interact? Where are they different? And how can you support one another in living by those values? Then the last two ways I'll mention to develop spiritual intimacy with a partner, friend, or family member are simply to share dreams and share fears. Okay? Our dreams are another thing that make us feel connected to a purpose, to motivation, to something outside of ourselves. And our fears are also often very directly related to a sense of disconnect from what's bigger than ourselves. And so by sharing those things with another person, we're creating an opportunity to develop intimacy on a spiritual level. All right, so we just covered, 25, 30 different ways to build intimacy in your relationships that have nothing to do with sex. So please pick a couple of them, 2 of them, 3 of them, and just start doing them. And start to notice what happens as you experience more intimacy on all of these different levels with different people in your life. It can absolutely transform the kind of romantic relationships that you choose, because now your basic human needs, which include connection, relationship, and intimacy, are getting met. And that frees you up to choose a partner, to choose a romantic relationship that isn't just about sex or physical intimacy or feeling validated. Now you can actually explore what kind of life you want moving forward and look for a partner who shares some of those values, some of those dreams. You open yourself up to a lot more choice and a lot more freedom in your relationships when you're experiencing intimacy on these other levels. If you haven't already, please make sure you subscribe to my channel. There's going to be lots more relationship-focused videos coming out soon. Thanks for being here, and I'll see you guys in the next video. If you found this video helpful, then you have to check out my free masterclass, How to Take Back Control of Your Life After Divorce. In that hour-long masterclass, I go into way more detail than I can cover on these YouTube videos about how specifically to start to heal, to stop the painful emotions, regain your confidence, and take back control of your future. I break it down into steps and give you a lot of actionable items that you can start using right now today to start feeling better. You'll find the link in the video description below under free masterclass, How to Take Back Control of Your Life After Divorce. I hope to see you on the masterclass and in the next video here on YouTube. Thanks for watching.